Permissionless Philanthropy. Try saying that 5 times fast, Neeraj.
I will not.
Well, we've got some great folks joining me for what I think is one of the most important topics in crypto right now. We'll go through the group. I'll start. My name is Frank Chaparro. I'm the Director of News at crypto information services firm, The Block. And Neeraj, you want to start us off?
Yeah, I'm Neeraj Agrawal. I'm the Director of Communications at Coin Center, which is a crypto policy think tank in DC.
I'm Jenny. I'm the Ecosystem Development Lead at the Stacks Foundation.
I'm Molly Jane. I'm the Head of Content at CoinMarketCap.
Yeah, hi guys, I'm Sergey. I'm the CEO and founder of the Ukrainian company Everstake, and I'm Ukrainian as well.
Thank you all for joining us. I think the most salient point that was made in the previous panel or session was that this geopolitical struggle and the pouring of support from crypto individuals has shown, I think on the world stage for the first time, that crypto is a force for good. And the one thing that I've found so fascinating or salient about that is so many times when we're engaging, or when I'm engaging with folks in the normal world and we talk about Bitcoin or crypto, they say, well, don't we already have Venmo? Don't we already have mechanisms by which we can exchange value? But what has happened in Ukraine shows for the first time things that the traditional payment networks cannot do, what traditional finance cannot do, and that is galvanize support in a permissionless, quick and easy mechanism. Do you think that, folks, this point is finally resonating with people for the first time?
Yeah, the way that the crypto community was able to very quickly funnel a lot of money directly into the custody of the Ukrainian government is not really something we've seen before, right? There's aid organizations and things like that you would donate to that become a middleman to whatever purpose is being pushed. But now we know that it's going directly to them, and they're telling us that they're spending it on things like bulletproof vests and stuff like that. It's great.
Molly, when we crunched the numbers, we found that about the amount of donations into Ukraine represented about 20% of what the Biden administration allocated. That's pretty substantial.
The amount of crypto donations?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot, and I want to bring up that when Ukraine originally started accepting crypto donations, people thought it was fake. If you guys remember when they tweeted the Bitcoin and Ethereum addresses, no one believed it was real. So what I think is fascinating is that it's still so new that the people might immediately jump to the wrong conclusion when a government or a state posts online in a way soliciting. So I don't know. I mean, I'm glad it was cleared up in the end and the money is real and going to the right way, but I definitely didn't believe in the beginning. I don't know if you guys did.
Yeah, that was a ripe moment for a scammer that could have gotten control of the Ukraine Twitter account.
Exactly.
But there's an interesting juxtaposition, right? At the same time that a lot of good has been displayed, there's also a lot of misinformation or questions being raised by folks on the international scene about this, I don't know if myth is too strong, I think you'd use this word, this myth that crypto is inherently useful for invading or evading sanctions. So it's almost like we're grappling with these two narratives, one of donations, galvanizing a community, permissionless finance, and another of this age-old narrative of crypto as a tool for criminals.
So I wouldn't call it a myth because crypto can be used to evade sanctions, and almost certainly some small amount is going to be evaded using cryptocurrency in Russia right now. But because we have such visibility into cryptocurrency networks, and because the scale of sanctions against Russia is so massive, it's just not feasible to think that any meaningful disruption of the overall mission of sanctions is possible with cryptocurrency as it exists today. So it's been very important to me, and I think the rest of the cryptocurrency community, to get that specific message out that we shouldn't react to something that is kind of physically impossible, at least from a policy perspective.
But there's almost even on the ground, and maybe Sergey can give perspective on this, a juxtaposition of Ukrainian leaders or leaders in Europe wanting, obviously, help, wanting contributions in the form of donations, but also wanting to cut off Russia from the financial system and from crypto exchanges. How does that juxtaposition reconcile?
But it's a bit different, like if you are inside in this situation, because when your house is hit by the missiles, you just try to think like how you can be useful and how you can resist all the situation. So no one is thinking about some big financial system. The only thing how to help. And you should understand that due to the martial law, Ukraine implemented some financial restrictions. It means that commercial banks could not transact in the USD. They cannot send wires outside the Ukraine. But the majority of supply, which currently is needed for Ukrainian humanitarian and military things, are located outside Ukraine. So we just were cut it off, like volunteers, and even some type of the government was cut it off of the buying this stuff. So that's why first question was how we'll send the money abroad. And then crypto was quite obvious things for us. So this is how it started. Then we understood that is the most efficient way to accept donation, because wires go 3 days. People want to donate and see do this money arrive already and so on. So in this critical situation, crypto as the technology become just the most efficient way to solve some specific problem. And only after that, we understand that this is working. We try to unite all the separated groups together. As you say, the different commerce, because it's somebody want to make money on the war as well. And we're approaching the different groups of the people, asking us what is legitimate, this address or those address, who is Kuna, who is Everstake, how you connect it, and so on. So that's why we have this under the umbrella of the digital transformation, put everything on a single website, and make it more official.
Jenny, do you think that this is one of the most prominent examples of Bitcoin's utility that we've seen?
I would say so. Just the sheer volume of donations that they were able to solicit directly, and as Sergey was saying, in somewhat of an official capacity, and the speed at which they were able to deploy that capital to buy military supplies, to allocate to humanitarian aid and just general aid in a matter of 2 weeks is unprecedented, in my opinion, and especially when you contrast that with the informal money transfer networks that are normally used around the world that rely on trust and that put people in risky, insecure situations. So the fact that this was able to be done in such a short amount of time and also in a fairly secure way, I think is pretty compelling.
And from all around the world.
From all around the world as well.
What impact do you think it has on philanthropy in general?
I don't think, well, I should start by saying I think it has a huge impact in that it empowers donors to feel like they can donate right away, right? With your average crypto investor, you can send $30 and know that it's making an impact. So you have this video of the Ukrainian government saying, we were able in 2 or 3 weeks to use your donations to buy bulletproof vests, helmets, and to allocate this money to other aid. That's really empowering for a donor to know. I think in the short term, that's great. I think long term, you still run into the same traditional challenges that you do with philanthropy as it exists today. You still have to do your own research to make sure that your money is going to the right places and it's going to the right causes. And in that way, it's still on a donor to do that research and to make sure that they're working with right organizations and they're working with the kinds of educators that already exist in this charitable network.
That's kind of the double-edged sword, right? With traditional platforms like a GoFundMe, you have a vetting process, you have criteria by which folks are onboarded onto the platform, but with Bitcoin, it's just someone sharing an address, maybe a video, but you do have to sort of do more due diligence than through traditional mechanisms.
Yeah. Totally. It's meaningful right now because people need this support right now. But long term, when we're talking about the reconstruction phase, when the Ukrainian government will inevitably have to rebuild infrastructure, that's going to require a plan. That's going to require communication. And as a donor, then you're looking at like a longer time horizon of, when should I allocate my money, how much, and to which organization. So again, due diligence, I'd say.
You mentioned GoFundMe. GoFundMe, even before I think cryptocurrency became involved, the war broke out and GoFundMe pages began forming immediately. And GoFundMe has in their terms of service, you can't fund kind of military operations. So all those got cut off.
Yeah. So that shows the other side of the permissionless in that part of the title of the panel. It's fascinating. It's almost like it's setting the stage, Jenny, to your point, to what a modern day 21st century Marshall Plan looks like to an extent. Mm-hmm. What say you, Molly?
Sorry, what's the question?
What say you, Molly, in terms of like how Bitcoin can be used as, rebuilding, reconstruction in a post-war regime?
So I think it can be incredibly useful, but at the same time it can be incredibly complicated because it's all good to say that you can send Bitcoin to be donations for these people, but if you're not sending Bitcoin to a government organization or an organization that understands how to turn that Bitcoin into something useful like food or like a helmet, then you're going to be stuck with a lot of a population with cryptocurrency in a wallet that they don't understand how to access, they don't understand how to use, they don't understand how to turn into anything that can actually be useful for them. So in my personal experience with sending money to and from that part of the world, I found Bitcoin to be incredibly useful, but only as a means to an end through local peer-to-peer services. So the Bitcoin is the way to get money into the country, but at the end of the day, people are still changing that Bitcoin for fiat. I don't know if anyone else has a different opinion about that.
Sergey, do you have any impression of what it looks like on the ground, the ability for them to make it liquid, cash out, to actually buy the supplies?
Yeah, you should understand the environment of the Ukraine. So the very big population of the Ukrainian are somehow connected with IT engineers, a lot of devs. And this is the most proactive environment. And believe me, they are all very familiar with the crypto. They use it mostly for transact, and we use our local currency, hryvnia, as a change, to refill the tank, to buy the food. So many of us more trust crypto than the traditional fiat system. And the other thing that this case did, that everyone started to make it to think about it seriously. So before that, they say, hey, there are some crypto guys, they played in what shitty games, pump and dump, some speculation, this is not serious. But right now, we have the conversation with, for example, Ministry of Defense, that hey, are you real? You have few millions, dozen millions? Yeah. And we can buy those and those? Yeah, we can. After we reach this threshold of 50 millions, our president signed the law that crypto is legal, the virtual assets is legal. So right now in the Ukraine, everyone understands this is serious, this is impactful, and it will exist after the war, probably forever in my life. So people charge this as very serious stuff, which is better than the banks in some critical situation. So we just prove that we are more efficient. And for now, imagine some volunteer or whoever who is able already to transact in crypto without permission, without all this bureaucracy. If they will be able to accept crypto, or bank wire will say yeah, can you send us crypto? So impactful of the liquidity and transparency is uncomparable with traditional bank system. So yes, I believe after we'll finish this war, will be invented some new, quite transparent, quite good things to allow all the world together to rebuild our country.
Do you think it moves Ukraine towards doing something a la El Salvador and adopting Bitcoin as national currency?
I was personally participating like 2 years ago with the project with the central bank. We tried to build CBDC. This project was like stuck in the bureaucracy, but it shows like several different needs. Like war show that there is some critical needs for the fast payments. We solve it. I cannot predict how we'll use it in the future, but what I'm pretty sure that we have the legal base for use. We like prove that we can do, and we prove this efficient. Based on this stuff, we can build amazing like products or like approaches in the future.
When the dust settles, nobody knows quite when that will happen, but when it does, will the general public, will the narrative around Bitcoin be permissionless philanthropy or sanctions evasion tool?
So thankfully, in this specific situation, the sanctions narrative has been pretty, aside from some people in the Senate, has been pretty thoroughly beaten back because it's simply not true. It's just the facts on the ground don't support it. The war in Ukraine is part of a growing trend that I've been noticing. This isn't the first time that there's been Bitcoin-centric philanthropy. There was the End SARS movement in Nigeria. There was the Buy Sol protests in Belarus. So we're finding that there's a very specific niche of a protest where you can't rely on the banking system for one reason or another. Be it war, be it in Nigeria, it was weaponized against the protest organizers. So as these, it's become a very popular tool for authoritarians to label dissent as extremists. And if someone's an extremist, then you can pull the levers of anti-terror financing laws and rules against them. I believe Putin did that with Navalny's, his opposition's organization. So that cuts off the banking system from those individuals because they need to comply with the local law, regardless of if the law is just or not. And in those situations, which are becoming more common, it seems, Bitcoin and cryptocurrency fills the gap kind of pretty perfectly.
Yeah, it illustrates or reveals the fact that the financial system a given person has is not guaranteed to be there in the same way it exists tomorrow. But there are still these issues that Molly and Jenny pointed out about the usability and the ease of use of giving and of engaging with the network. What tools, Jenny, can we build, or can the industry build, to make the process more streamlined?
Actually, I think there are a few organizations that are already working on implementing crypto rails to make it so these organizations they're the ones that have been on the ground and doing this kind of work with people who've been displaced, people in crisis situations. So in terms of what Molly was saying, getting people food and basic resources, I, as a donor on my side of the screen, can't fly out there and do that work myself. But as long as there is a reliable transaction network, there's a good interface that I can use to send my funds to that cause, I think that is the kind of infrastructure that needs to be more widespread, more mainstream, and once more organizations pick that up and build those crypto rails, those kinds of applications, I think that is something that will encourage more of this kind of just donor behavior, more of what we're seeing with Ukraine.
And it's more direct. Does anyone have a sense of the degree to which the donation, or rather the recipient of the donation, is able to capture more of the value than through traditional mechanisms? Like, I imagine that would be the case, because you're directly sending it, so it's not like you have these toll takers sitting in between.
I think it's very context specific, so it depends on the situation. So again, in the situation of trying to get people basic support and basic aid, cash transfers and digital cash transfers have been proven to be one of the most effective ways to support people in crisis situations. So in that way, yes, I think a recipient absolutely captures more value when you have a reliable, secure transaction network like these crypto tools.
Yeah. That's what I would expect as well. Molly, what does this precipitate in terms of future geopolitical events you know, there's not just war, but there's also famine and other sort of natural disasters. Does Bitcoin become the lingua franca in terms of the currency of supporting folks in need?
I mean, I'll say the really obvious point is that Bitcoin's volatility is a huge stumbling block, because the money you send as a donation today, while it could be up 10% tomorrow, it also could just continue to go down and down and down. And so I think that what this war is showing us is how Bitcoin really can be useful as a donation tool, but I think that it has to be sold to or changed into something useful for the effort incredibly quickly. So I could imagine in the future, yeah, you could use Bitcoin to send money to help hurricane aid if like the Bitcoin came and it was immediately somehow transferred for like boats or medical aid or et cetera, you know. If you're going to talk about using crypto in the long term to build up a whole permissionless philanthropy movement, then stablecoins seem like the much more obvious choice, because you don't want your donation to turn into zero. And there always is that small fear. Even as someone that personally thinks Bitcoin is pretty great, that doesn't mean that I think it's going to always be going up.
If anyone wants to send me any crypto to buy a boat, perfectly fine for you to do so. She raises a great point. Why Bitcoin? Why not stablecoin or something else?
I think a lot of the use for people, not just in this situation, but like sex workers and other people who are otherwise cut out of the financial system, does tend to move towards stablecoins for that exact reason. The issue there, and I think that's great, the issue there is that stablecoins are centralized issuers, typically, the big ones. There's still counterparty risk there. There's the risk of your account being frozen. They also have to comply with local laws. But in general, yeah, I agree that at this point, people are going to want dollars, and this happens that stablecoins are sort of supercharged dollars.
Jenny, do you want to weigh in?
I was going to say, even so, Bitcoin, stablecoin, what have you, they're great alternatives to what happens now, which is, I was talking to an organization that does some humanitarian work, and they say that in some situations, they will just fly out with bags of cash to these conflict areas, and you know, it's no surprise that the people who need the cash don't get it, and you're relying on like the goodwill of some people to accept that cash. They could easily just say no. So compared to that situation, Bitcoin, stablecoins, great alternatives.
I think I was told I'm allowed to open questions to the floor. If there are mics that we can pass around to people, there's a gentleman over here.
Good morning. Yeah, great presentation. Thanks for being here. My question is, prior to cryptocurrencies, various countries have been sanctioned all over the world, and they've still been able to get around those sanctions through shell companies and other means, essentially. And so I guess my direct question is, you mentioned that cryptocurrency was used to evade sanctions, in Russia now, but with the adoption of blockchain and then more users adopting cryptocurrencies, do you see a future where essentially cryptocurrency is used to more accurately pinpoint when a country is evading sanctions, essentially with the identification of blockchain, and if there's a lot of users using it in the future, do you think it'll be a way to pinpoint violations of sanctions?
Yeah, I think we're actually in that world now. That's why I'm not really losing any sleep over the threat of Russians evading sanctions at scale. Some small amounts, a few million here and there, are going to slip through. That's just the nature of things. But in general, somebody trying to move even $1 billion through the system, which I'm like saying even $1 billion, but like that will be very obvious. It's just too difficult to launder that. Like I think, what was it, Johnny Levin in Congress from Analysis said that or the global mixing volume is $30 million a day.
Yes, but let's say I was a billionaire Russian oligarch with $1 trillion.
Yeah, a hypothetical oligarch
Hypothetically.
who already, the hypothetical question, we're referring to a
Senate hearing.
a tense question. There was a Senate hearing on the risk of Russians using, sanctioned Russians using cryptocurrency to evade those sanctions. And Elizabeth Warren got into a bit of a tussle with one of the panelists about that because the question she posed was, would a hypothetical oligarch with $1 billion already in crypto, which probably doesn't exist, I would imagine, could they launder it? And the answer was no, and that answer wasn't good.
It wasn't favorable to Senator Warren, but it speaks to the fact that it is fairly difficult, especially with the limited amounts of liquidity within those different mixers.
Yeah, I think in that same Chainalysis report, they're monitoring any whale address, so any address with over $1 million in crypto, they can see those transactions, and I think if there are large transactions being made, it's like very easy to trace that activity, so also not losing sleep over it.
Chainalysis is watching all of you,
Yeah.
especially you.
Yeah, there's two pieces I'd like to throw in, and Sergey, I'm particularly interested in your answer here. I worry that you're overplaying the benefit here. One of the magical things that's going on during this war is, the ability to wire money using traditional banking directly to the bank account of the army. I mean, that's the way that I've been donating is front door of the National Bank right into the Army's bank account. So, if you think about the general costs of offloading into fiat, you're probably paying more than I was paying on a wire transfer, so there was an efficiency there. But I do want to, identify one of the massive benefits, which is, we have a relationship with an IT shop in the Ukraine who have been using crypto to buy gear, drones, night vision goggles, etc., from Germany, which they wouldn't be able to do otherwise because, Germany politically is very restricted in the way that they'll sell equipment. So it's the ability to operate in the dark or outside of the system really, in what I've seen has been a huge benefit here. And so
I guess it depends on whether you're in the system or out of the system.
Well, it's a both, right? I think, it's magical that there's an address provided, but it's also, you can do things using normal banking rails, and then using crypto to kind of go outside. I mean, these guys tell me they brought down a tank column with this stuff. So
you should understand, this is the question of survival. If you will put in the normal conditions, buys from the central bank, from the some Minister of Digital Information and crypto guy, they probably will do some different stuff and will argue different. But if you will put all us together and see, hey guys, our country needs to survive. So all of us try to find just the most efficient way to survive. That's all. So there is no pros and cons, we need just do it. So why central bank? Because this is the only bank which is allowed to send via outdraw. And we cannot buy everything for the crypto. There are some suppliers which are cannot talk right now, but they say hey guys, we cannot accept crypto, we need money, we need fiat. So that's why we call with the FTX, they allow us to send some of the donation to the FTX, exchange to the USD and send directly to the Central Bank of Ukraine. So we just use all available methods and tools to buy something that will help us to resist. And I believe after this case, Central Bank will not will be much more supportive to us and the crypto people in the Ukraine to follow these helping traditions.
Thank you. Maybe one more question, or are we all set?
Thank you very much for the presentation. Just wondering, that what you have said is that there's a situation that is unjust, and that's why we are using cryptocurrency in order to help, you see. And the challenge is that the world is suffering of these problems, Do you see another way that can be solved all these issues, you know? Because it's like the world citizens are taking sides, you see? And then suddenly, you know, there's no world government that will say this should not be happening. Why are you spending all that effort, you know, just to defend and we are not doing anything? What do you think that we should be done? Because what we are trying to do with cryptocurrencies is to facilitate the betterment of the world and all that, and then suddenly we are facing all these problems, you know, that should be done like that, you know. So then it's still, you know, we're not solving the problem because the world governments are not in operation.
I can agree with you that we will not solve the problem. Like, I believe that the most important lesson we have after this case, that global crypto community, and not just crypto community, everyone could join, they become more efficient and faster to respond for the global challenge, even if for US government, even for European government. They're thinking, they're talking, they're afraid in whatever. But some thousands, and I hope millions of the people around the world who understand that this is challenging are acting right now. So is the way for the global community, for the people who take care to make impact right now with a global scale, without asking permission of the government, of the bank, whatever. I see the problem, I solve it right now. And based on these lessons, I believe we'll see quite amazing global efforts, which could very much more impactful even than the government efforts.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Appreciate your time.